My son and daughter-in-law took me to a 5-star hotel for the first time in my life. We stayed there the entire weekend, and then, as we stood in the lobby ready to check out, my son turned to me with a practiced smile and said, "Thanks for the stay, Mom." He walked away, leaving me alone with an $11,000 bill I had never agreed to. I stared at the paper in my trembling hands when an elderly receptionist stepped out from behind the counter. Her soft voice carried a strange certainty. "Are you Mr. Caldwell's daughter?" I blinked, confused. She nodded slowly, as if confirming something inside herself. "I worked for your father for 33 years. Before he passed, he made me promise to give you this envelope when the time was right." She placed a worn, yellowed envelope into my shaking hands. Inside was something that proved my son had planned this entire nightmare from the beginning, something that would change everything. But before I tell you what was inside, you need to understand how I ended up here. 2 weeks earlier, my phone rang late in the afternoon. When I answered, I heard a voice I barely recognized, warm, excited, almost loving. "Mom," my son Ethan said, "I want to take you somewhere special. Ava and I want to thank you for everything you've done for us." My breath caught. 66 years of working myself to the bone. Cleaning houses, raising him alone, stretching every dollar until it screamed, and never once had he spoken to me that way. "I booked a 5-star hotel," he continued. "All weekend. Your own suite, spa, fancy restaurants. Everything is covered. It's our gift to you." I closed my eyes, and the tears came before I could stop them. For the first time in decades, I thought maybe my son finally saw me. Maybe he loved me. I was wrong. Friday morning, he and Ava picked me up in a sleek black sedan. Ava wore a champagne dress that looked more expensive than 3 months of my rent. Ethan looked polished, confident, proud, beautiful in a way only money can polish a person. The hotel was a palace, marble columns stretching toward the sky, floors gleaming like water, chandeliers dripping with gold, the scent of jasmine floating in the air. I felt small, like a creature wandering into a world not meant for her. But Ethan held my arm gently and whispered, "Relax, Mom. You belong here." Ava smiled with perfect sweetness. "Nora, you're going to love the suite. It's incredible." I didn't sense the poison behind her voice. Not then. The suite was bigger than my entire apartment. A bed that looked like clouds. Giant windows overlooking a garden full of red and yellow flowers. A bathroom with pearl tiles and soft towels that made me want to cry. I sat on the bed, running my hand over the sheets, whispering to myself, "My son brought me here. He loves me." The weekend felt magical. Exotic breakfasts, fancy lunches, wine I couldn't pronounce, laughter at dinner. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to breathe. Saturday night, we ate on the terrace, Los Angeles glowing like scattered stars under us. Ethan lifted his glass and said, "To you, Mom, everything I am is because of you." Ava clapped softly. I cried. I didn't know I was drinking my own downfall. Sunday morning, Ethan told me to meet him in the lobby at 11. I arrived right on time, full of gratitude. He and Ava were speaking to a young blonde receptionist. I approached with a smile. Ethan hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thanks for the stay, Mom. It was unforgettable." Then he placed the bill in my hands. $11,000. They walked out calmly, casually, laughing together, and got into the shiny sedan. They didn't even look back. I stood there frozen. The bill shook in my hands until the numbers blurred. I made $800 a month cleaning houses. $11,000 was more than a year of my life. And Ethan knew it. He knew exactly how much I earned, how much I didn't have. He knew I could never pay this. The receptionist asked gently, "Ma'am, will that be cash or card?" I couldn't breathe. I whispered, I don't have it." Around me, life continued, families laughing, businessmen talking, children dragging suitcases. while my world collapsed on that marble floor. Humiliation searing through me like fire. The receptionist shifted nervously. "Ma'am, please stay calm. We'll figure something out." But there was nothing to figure out. I had nothing. Then I heard slow, dragging footsteps. I looked up to see an elderly woman emerging from behind the counter. Her white hair in a tight bun. Her uniform visibly older than everyone else's. The blonde receptionist whispered, "Emma, you don't have to." But the old woman raised a hand, silencing her. She approached me, her honey-colored eyes studying my face as if searching for a memory. "You are Mr. Caldwell's daughter." My heart lurched. Caldwell, my father. A name no one had spoken in decades. "Yes," I whispered. I am." Emma's eyes filled with emotion. "I worked for your father from the time I was 20 until the day he died. He was difficult, demanding, but a great man. Before he passed, he called me to his bedside. He could barely speak, but he gave me something for you." She reached into her worn uniform pocket and pulled out the yellow envelope. "Your father made me promise to give you this the moment you needed it most." And she placed it in my shaking hands as the world around us seemed to fall silent. The envelope was old and fragile, its corners softened by time. The ink on the front was almost gone, but my name was still there in shaky handwriting. "Nora." Emma held it as if it were something sacred. "He told me," she whispered, "Emma, one day my daughter will come here. She will be alone. She will be lost. When she arrives, give her this. It's the only thing I can leave her now." Her hands trembled as she extended the envelope toward me. I stared at it, afraid to touch it. "He arranged everything," she continued. "He asked the hotel manager to hire me 30 years ago. He said you would eventually come. And today, here you are." Her voice cracked, and tears filled her honey-colored eyes. "After all these years, I can finally keep my promise." I took the envelope with numb fingers. It felt heavy. Something solid was inside, not just paper. When I opened it, a folded letter fell out, along with an old rusted metal key. The key had 447 engraved on it, and attached to it was a small leather tag with a handwritten address. I unfolded the letter. My father's handwriting. Slanted, tired. The same handwriting I had seen only on old documents he rarely signed. The first line stopped my heart. "Nora, if you are reading this, it means you finally discovered that nothing in our family was what it appeared to be." The rest of the letter unfolded like a blow to the chest. "Forgive me for the secrets. Forgive me for leaving you without answers. This key opens a storage unit at the address Emma will give you. Inside, you will find the truth about who I really was. And who you are. Go alone. Trust no one. Your father, Robert Caldwell." I read it again and again. The words refused to make sense. Secrets, truth, who I really was. All my life, my father had been silent, private, distant. He worked early, came home late, spoke little. When he died, I expected anything that would help me raise Ethan, but instead I was left with debts that forced me to sell nearly everything we owned. And now, 3 decades later, he was telling me the life I knew was a lie. I looked up at Emma, who watched me with a mixture of sadness and urgency. "What's in that storage unit?" I asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. He never told me, only that you would come for it when you were lost and alone. And today, you are." Her honesty cut deep. I glanced at the leather tag. Industrial Street 447, Warehouse 12, East Side. I knew the place. Old factories. Abandoned buildings. Streets no one walked after sunset. A place designed to hide secrets. The blonde receptionist's voice jolted me back. "Ma'am, the bill." The humiliation returned, but something inside me had changed. The shame was now mixed with icy rage. Ethan had done this. He had led me here. He had planned everything. Before I could speak, Emma turned to the receptionist with unexpected authority. I will handle the lady's bill. Put it under my name. I will pay it in installments from my salary. The receptionist looked shocked. Emma, you can't. I can, Emma interrupted, her voice sharp. Her father saved my life more times than I can count. This is the least I can do. My throat tightened. This elderly woman who owed me nothing was paying my debt, a debt my own son had created. I can't accept this, I whispered. Emma took my hands, her grip surprisingly strong. Yes, you can. And you will. But first, you must go to that address. Open that storage unit. Find out why your son did this. A chill went through me. What do you mean? Emma looked away as if revealing the next truth caused physical pain. Your father told me things before he died. About your family, about secrets buried deep. He believed someone would come looking for the truth one day. Someone from your bloodline. But he didn't think it would be you who needed it. He thought it would be someone else. My stomach twisted. Who else? Emma inhaled slowly. Your son was here 6 months ago. He asked for me. My breath caught. He said he was researching his grandfather for a family project. I told him I worked for Mr. Caldwell, that I knew him well. He asked too many questions. About properties, money, inheritance. His eyes lit up with greed. I realized I had made a terrible mistake. My knees nearly buckled. Ethan had been here. He had questioned Emma. He had learned something about my father, something he wanted for himself. And then he crafted this entire weekend this trap to leave me with nothing while he chased whatever was hidden inside that storage unit. What did you tell him? I whispered. I only told him your father owned things, left things unresolved. That was enough. A wave of nausea hit me. The truth was clear. Ethan had been planning this for 6 months. I need to go there, I said quietly. Emma nodded. Go now. Before he gets there first. Because if Ethan finds it, you will be left with nothing. I left the hotel in a daze, the key digging into my palm hard enough to break the skin. The sun was bright and cruel as the city moved around me, and indifferent scars rushing, people chatting, vendors shouting, while my entire life seemed to be collapsing inward. I took a bus toward the east side. It felt like the longest hour of my life. The scenery shifted from clean buildings to cracked sidewalks and graffiti-covered walls. The city darkened the farther I went. By the time I reached Industrial Street, the sun was dipping into shades of orange and violet. Warehouse 12 stood at the far end of a row of rusted metal buildings. Its door was tall and gray, covered in dust and cobwebs, the padlock untouched for decades. Everything in that warehouse was rotten, eaten by time. Boxers collapsed, papers destroyed, shelves rusted. But the envelope on the table looked new. Someone had been there recently. That thought made my skin tighten. I reached out and picked it up with trembling hands. It was heavier than I expected. More than paper was inside. I opened it carefully and emptied its contents onto the table. Documents spilled out, property deeds. Birth certificates, death certificates, old black and white photos, and a brown leather notebook worn from use. I held the phone light between my teeth and started going through them. The first deed was for a house in the center of the city. Liberty Avenue 328, registered under the name Robert Caldwell. Dated 1982. I had never seen that address in my life. I never knew my father owned anything beyond the small house where I grew up. My hands shook as I picked up the next document. Another property. Then another. 5 houses in total. all registered in expensive neighborhoods during the 70s and 80s. None of this was possible. My father always said he worked at a textile factory. He always looked exhausted. We never had luxuries. My mother used leftover fabric to sew my dresses. I wore shoes until the soles separated. And he had owned 5 properties. My chest tightened. I picked up a birth certificate. The name made my heart stop. Ramon Caldwell Delgado. Born April 15, 1968. Father, Robert Caldwell. Mother, Victoria Delgado. I blinked at the paper. I read it again. And again. My father had another child. A son. Michael was not the only grandson. I was not the only daughter. I scrambled through the pile until I found another. Gabriela Caldwell Torres. Born 1975. Father, Robert Caldwell. Mother, Martina Torres. Another sister. My breathing went shallow. My father had an entire second life, maybe a third. Other children. Other women. Other homes. While I grew up thinking we were barely surviving, he had secret families and hidden wealth. The photographs confirmed everything. The first one showed my father young, smiling, with his arm around a dark-haired woman holding a baby. Behind them stood a big house with a garden. In the next photo, he was with a blonde woman in front of a shiny car. In another, he stood alone in a suit and tie outside an office building. He was not the factory worker he pretended to be. He was someone else entirely. Hands trembling, I opened the leather notebook. Inside were meticulous financial notes. January 1978. Rent collection $3,200. Payment to Victoria $500. Payment to Ellen, my mother, $400. Savings for new property $2,300. Then page after page of similar entries, money divided between different families. A cold, sharp pain hit me. Everything I believed about my father was a lie. He wasn't humble. He wasn't struggling. He was wealthy. He kept multiple families in the shadows. He hid everything. I closed my eyes, feeling the entire foundation of my childhood crack. But this still didn't explain Ethan. Why had he done this? I kept searching through the pile until I found a newer paper. A document written 7 months ago. A letter addressed to Ethan. Dear Ethan Caldwell, in response to your inquiry regarding the estate of Robert Caldwell, I confirm the properties remain registered under the deceased's name. However, a sealed will exists in this office that cannot be opened until all legitimate heirs are located. Recognized heirs to date: Ramon Caldwell Delgado, Gabriela Caldwell Torres. Signed, Notary Public Number 47. My stomach twisted. Ethan had found out. He had discovered the properties. He had discovered the will. He had learned about the other heirs. And he had decided that the fortune should be his. But to claim it, he needed me out of the picture legally, emotionally, financially. That's why the hotel trip. That's why the humiliation. That's why he left me with nothing. He wanted me so damaged I wouldn't fight for my share of the inheritance. A metallic clang snapped me back. Footsteps outside the warehouse. Slow, heavy, approaching. My heart pounded. I shoved the most important documents into my purse and turned off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. The footsteps stopped right at the door. I knew you'd come here, Mom. Ethan's voice slashed through the silence. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it toward the entrance. He stood there, dark silhouette against the dying orange sky. Gone were the sunglasses, the fake smile. His face was sharp, cold, twisted with greed. Emma told you, didn't she? He sneered. Old fool never knew when to keep her mouth shut. He stepped inside. I backed away, instinctive fear rising inside me. I spent 6 months researching your father, Ethan said, voice dripping with triumph. 6 months discovering that the saintly old man was actually a liar who built a fortune behind our backs. And now that fortune belongs to me. He had other children, I said. surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. There's a will. Other heirs. It's not just yours. Ethan laughed dry, bitter, ugly. They don't know you exist. And if you don't exist legally, you can't claim anything. That's why I needed to destroy you first. Break you emotionally. Ruin you financially. Make sure you have nothing left. A shadow moved behind him. Ava stepped forward, arms crossed, her face cold and sharp. The hotel was my idea, she said proudly. Elegant way to break you. Efficient. They both smiled. The sight curdled something inside me. I felt the words rise before I even thought them. I won't let you take everything. Ethan's expression turned dangerous. He stepped closer, blocking the doorway. You don't have a choice, Mom. You're already ruined. When we finish, you won't even have a place to sleep. Then, a deep male voice rumbled through the warehouse, echoing off the walls. She's not alone. We froze. The voice came from the far back of the warehouse. I raised my phone light and the beam caught the figure of a man stepping out from the shadows, tall, broad, gray hair cut short. Heavy lines around his eyes. Strong jaw. His posture radiated confidence, authority, and something else, something familiar. He walked forward slowly, stopping a few feet from Ethan, his eyes swept over my son with disdain before, turning to me with something like recognition, something like pain. Ethan tried to sound tough. Who the hell are you? The man didn't answer right away. He just kept looking at me, studying me as if I were a memory he'd long buried. I'm Ray, he finally said. Ray Caldwell, your brother. The world tilted. Everything inside me went silent. The word hung in the cold warehouse air like thick smoke. Brother. The birth certificate I had seen earlier flashed in my mind. Ramon Ray. The son my father had 6 years before me. The heir the notary mentioned. He wasn't a name on paper anymore. He was standing in front of me, real, solid, alive. It can't be, I whispered, but inside, something in me already knew. It made sense. Too much sense. Ray stepped closer, into the reach of my phone's flashlight. And then I saw it. The same dark brown eyes as my father. The same stubborn eyebrows. The same jawline. It felt like staring at a version of my father brought back to life. My throat tightened and tears blurred my vision. Ray reached into his shirt pocket and handed me a folded document. 3 months ago, I got a notice from the notary. They told me our father died 30 years ago and left a will. That I was one of the heirs. His voice shook. I never knew any of this. My mother never spoke his name. I grew up thinking he abandoned us before I was born. I took the paper from him with trembling hands. It was the same notary letter I had seen earlier among the documents. I started investigating, Ray continued. That's when I discovered I had sisters. You and Gabriella. He swallowed hard. She died 10 years ago. My heart twisted painfully. He took a steadying breath. Then I learned the rest. That our father wasn't the man we thought. He lived double lives. Maybe triple. He hid money, properties, whole families. He lied to everyone. He built a fortune while our mothers struggled to feed us. His voice cracked. And in his eyes I saw the same heartbreak that had been tearing through me. We were children of the same lie, he whispered. Victims of the same man. He turned toward Ethan slowly, deliberately. Ethan stiffened. Ava pressed herself against the wall, all her arrogance gone. When I found this warehouse, Ray said, I came to see what was inside. I found everything: documents, photos, the will. His eyes sharpened. And I discovered something else. He stepped toward Ethan, who instinctively stepped back. I discovered your son had been here, Ray said. That he bribed notary workers. That he contacted Emma. That he dug into every secret our father hid. And that he was planning something. Ethan tried to speak, but Ray kept talking. So I waited. I stayed close. I watched you, Ethan, and I watched how far you were willing to go. Ray took another step. Now he towered over my son. Ava didn't move. What I never expected, Ray said, voice low and burning, was the cruelty. That you would humiliate your own mother, leave her broke, strip her dignity, break her just to get her out of your way. He stopped inches from Ethan. You're worse than our father ever was. He kept his lies hidden. You weaponized them. Ethan tried to square his shoulders, but his voice trembled. That fortune is mine. I'm his grandson. I have more right than you and nobody who never even met him. Ray's jaw clenched, but he didn't move. Legally, he said, we are equal. You, me, and Nora, through your grandmother. But there's one difference. I didn't come here to steal. I came for truth. I came so no one else would suffer because of Robert Caldwell's lies. He looked at me again, his face softening. Nora, I know this is overwhelming, but there's something you need to know. He pulled out another document folder, yellow with age. Our father's will was very clear. He divided the properties equally among us as legitimate children, but he added a clause. If any heir tries to harm, deceive, or dispossess another, they automatically lose their share. The words echoed like thunder. I looked at Ethan, his face drained of all color. Ray kept going. Your son planned to destroy you, Nora. He hired private investigators, bribed notary staff, manipulated Emma. He created a plan to leave you broken so you wouldn't contest the inheritance. Ray reached into his pocket and took out his phone. And I documented everything. He swiped through photo screenshots, emails, text messages, emails between Ethan and a private investigator, bank transfers to corrupt workers, messages between Ethan and Ava planning every detail of the hotel setup, every lie, every betrayal, every disgusting step of their plan. According to the will, Ray said, his voice cold as steel, Ethan loses all rights to the inheritance. Then he turned to Ava. And you, Ava, as his accomplice, you won't see a cent either. Ava let out a broken, strangled sob, her earlier pride collapsing in an instant. This is a setup. You can't prove any of it. Ethan's voice cracked, but his arrogance still clung to him like a dying flame. Ray didn't even blink. I can prove it. And I already have. Copies of every document, every message, every transfer. They're all in the notary's hands. The legal hearing is in 2 weeks. By then, you won't just lose your inheritance. You'll face charges for fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Ethan snapped. You meddling bastard. This isn't your problem. She's my mother, not yours. He took a threatening step toward Ray, but Ray didn't move. Exactly, Ray said, voice low and steady. She's your mother. The woman who raised you, fed you, worked herself to death for you. And you paid her back with betrayal. That doesn't make you ambitious, Ethan. It makes you something far worse than a thief. The silence that followed was sharp and suffocating. Ethan's fists shook with rage he didn't know how to control. Ava sobbed quietly against the wall, her elegant persona shattered. And I stood there, realizing that in one single afternoon, everything I knew had collapsed. I had lost my son. But I had gained a brother. My father was a liar, but even in death, he tried to protect us. And the life I believed in was nothing more than a story built on lies. Ray walked toward me slowly and placed a large, rough hand on my shoulder. I know it hurts, he murmured. I went through the same thing 3 months ago. Finding out your whole life was fake feels like dying and waking up as a stranger. His voice softened with unexpected kindness. Our father was a terrible man, Nora. But that doesn't mean we have to be. We can decide what to do with the truth he left behind. I don't want the fortune, I whispered, surprising myself. Ray nodded as if he had been waiting for those words. I don't want all of it either. And that's why I have a proposal. But first, we finish this. He turned to Ethan one last time. You have 2 choices. You walk out of here, Stay away from your mother forever. And maybe I won't press criminal charges. Or you can fight this in court, and I will make sure you spend years behind bars." Ethan glared at me with pure hatred. There was no trace of the boy I had raised. Only a stranger who had used my love as a weapon. "This isn't over," he spat. He grabbed Ava by the arm, and they left the warehouse. Their footsteps faded into the distance, swallowed by rust, metal, and the growing darkness. And then Ray and I were alone. The silence felt different now. Not heavy, just unfamiliar, full of questions neither of us knew how to ask yet. Ray stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching me with a mixture of caution and something like hope. As if he didn't want to scare me, but he didn't want to disappear again either. My voice was tired when I finally spoke. "How did you know I'd be here today?" He leaned against a rusted shelf. "I didn't, but I knew your son's plan. I knew he'd bring you to the hotel. I knew he'd abandon you. And I knew Emma would finally keep her promise. So, I came here every afternoon for the last 2 weeks, waiting. 2 weeks. This man, this stranger who shared my blood, had been waiting in an abandoned warehouse to protect me from a fate I didn't even know was coming." "Why?" I whispered. "Why do you care what happens to me? You don't know me. We barely met." Ray looked into the shadows for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried decades of loneliness. "I spent 58 years believing I was alone," he said quietly. "My mother died when I was 19. I never had siblings. I never had family. Just emptiness." He breathed deeply, his eyes glistening. "And then I discovered I had sisters. People out there with the same blood in their veins. It felt like hope. Like maybe I wasn't alone after all. Gabriella is gone. Only you and I are left. And I wasn't going to let your son destroy you before we ever had a chance to meet." The tears I had been holding back finally broke. I cried for Ethan, for the child I lost, for the father who lied, for my mother who died without knowing, for Gabriella, for Ray, for myself, for everything. Ray stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. He didn't talk. He didn't try to fix anything. He just held me steady and warm while I crumbled. For the first time in decades, I felt safe. When the storm inside me finally settled, Ray stepped back and handed me a clean handkerchief. I wiped my face, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Don't be," he said gently. "You have every right to break." I cried for weeks when I found out what our father did. He bent down and picked up the leather notebook from the floor. He turned to a marked page and showed it to me. "Look," he said quietly. "This is who Robert Caldwell really was." And for the first time, I was ready to see it. I held the phone closer to the notebook. It was a journal entry, dated 1985. "Victoria threatened today to reveal everything if I don't give her more money. I gave her an extra $500 to keep her quiet. Ellen suspects something. I need to be more careful. The properties are generating good income. Soon I can buy the 5th house." I turned the page. Then another and another. Every entry was the same cold, calculating. My father never wrote about love. Never about guilt. Only about money. About control. About how to keep the women in his life separate. How to prevent his children from meeting. How to maximize profit while giving us just enough to survive. It wasn't a father's diary. It was a manual for manipulation. "He was a monster," I whispered. The words scraped my throat. Ray closed the notebook gently. "He was human," he said quietly. "Selfish, cowardly, cruel, but still human." He sat on the concrete floor and motioned for me to sit beside him. I lowered myself next to him, too exhausted to stand any longer. "You know what the saddest part is?" Ray continued. "In the end, with all his money, all his lies, all his houses, he died alone in a hospital bed. None of his women were with him. None of his children. Only Emma, an employee he paid to guard his secrets." I remembered Emma's trembling hands in the hotel lobby. Ray nodded. She was the only loyal person he had. And even she stayed out of obligation. She simply did what he asked. She was the only one who fulfilled his last wish. We sat in silence for a long moment. The warehouse was dark and damp, but sharing that silence with Ray felt strangely comforting. "You said you had a proposal," I finally said. Ray straightened and looked at me. "The 5 properties our father left behind are worth around $800,000. According to the will, we each get $400,000. He paused, trying to find the right words. "My proposal is this. We sell everything. Every house, every asset." I watched him carefully. "And then," he continued, "we use that money to do something our father never did. Something good." "Like what?" I asked softly. Ray smiled his first real smile since I met him. It changed his whole face. "Emma needs help. Old age, no family. She spent her whole life working. We'll give her $50,000. She deserves that much." I nodded immediately. It felt right. "And the rest," Ray said, "we divide. But not to spend on ourselves. We create something meaningful. A fund for women like our mothers, single mothers who clean houses, who struggle, who raise kids alone. We give out scholarships, support, anything we can." He looked at me with a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "We turn our father's dirty money into something that actually helps people." Tears filled my eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of grief. "Our father used that money to control and hurt," I said quietly. "We'll use it to free and heal." Ray extended his hand. "Do you agree?" I placed my hand in his, firm and steady. "I agree." We stood up, brushing off dust. Ray began organizing the documents, carefully stacking them. "We'll need a lawyer to handle the will and property sales," he said. "I know someone," I replied. "My neighbor. She's always been kind." "Perfect," Ray said. "We start tomorrow." Tomorrow, the word felt unreal. This morning, tomorrow didn't exist for me. I had no future, no hope. Now, I had a brother, a plan, a purpose. We walked toward the warehouse exit. "Ray," I said softly, "thank you. For waiting for me. For protecting me. For everything." He stopped and turned. His eyes looked like our father's, but warmer than I ever remembered my father being. "Don't thank me," he said. "We're family. And real family doesn't abandon you in a hotel lobby with a bill you can't pay. Real family waits in abandoned warehouses for 2 weeks to make sure you're okay." His voice cracked just a little. "I spent my entire life without siblings. Now that I've found you, I'm not going to lose you." We walked out together. The sky was pitch black, dotted with stars that shimmered like promises. Ray closed the metal door and locked it. "This place did its job," he said. "We don't need it anymore." We walked down the empty industrial street, our steps matching without planning. He walked me to the bus stop. The lamps flickered yellow. The cold wind cut through my clothes, and I hugged myself. Ray slipped off his denim jacket and put it around my shoulders. It smelled like detergent and honesty. So different from Ethan's colognes and lies. "Where do you live?" Ray asked. I told him my address, an old building in the north. Nothing special, but it was mine, earned with 30 years of scrubbing floors. "That's far," Ray said. "I'm driving you." I shook my head. "You've done enough. I don't want to bother you." He chuckled. "Nora, I waited 2 weeks in an abandoned warehouse. Taking you home is nothing." His truck was parked 2 blocks away. Dented, cracked windshield, but the engine hummed reliably. I climbed in, buckled my seatbelt, and he turned on the heater. The smell of coffee and cheap air fresheners filled the cab. We drove in silence, the city lights passing by. Industrial blocks turned into neighborhoods, then homes, families, normalcy. "What do you do for work?" Ray asked quietly. "I clean houses," I answered. 5 days a week. Sometimes 6. Ray nodded slowly. Then we'll make sure no one like you ever suffers the way you did. For the first time in a long time, I believed it. My mother cleaned houses too, Ray said quietly. She worked until the cancer made her so weak she couldn't even hold a broom. She died with shattered hands and a broken back. She was for The pain in his voice was so raw it tightened something inside my chest. My mother died at 52. Diabetes. The bitterness burned my throat as I spoke. She couldn't afford her medicine. She kept working until she collapsed in one of her clients' houses. The woman didn't even call an ambulance. She just called me and said, "Your mother fainted. Come get her. She's dirtying my marble floor." Ray hit the steering wheel not hard, but with a frustration that came from decades of buried hurt. "Our mothers worked themselves to death," he said. "While our father bought houses. He could have helped them, could have given us safer lives, but he chose secrecy and control." He rubbed his eyes like he was wiping away memories that still stung. "That's why," he said, voice tighter, "I want to use that money to help other women. So no one else dies cleaning floors for people who don't even see them as human." I swallowed hard and shifted the conversation. "What do you do for work?" A sad smile crossed his face. "I'm a mechanic. I have a small shop on the south side. I fix old cars, the ones rich people throw away. I don't earn much, but it's honest. Every cent I have, I earned with my own hands. Not by lying, not by stealing." There was pride in his voice. A real, grounded kind of pride. Something my son never had.
Michael.
The name stabbed through me. My son? The child I protected above myself. The boy I walked to school for 12 years because we couldn't afford the bus. The boy I fed with food I didn't eat. The boy who cried in my arms after heartbreaks and failures. That boy had become a cold stranger who used me like trash. "Do you think he'll come back?" I asked, even though I dreaded the answer. Ray didn't speak for a moment. He drove with both hands tight on the steering wheel. "Honestly," he said finally, "I don't know. Greed does strange things. He might accept he lost. Or he might try something desperate." He looked at me briefly. "Which is why I want you to have this." He opened the center compartment and handed me a card with his phone number written carefully on it. "If Michael tries to reach you, if he threatens you, if you feel unsafe, you call me, immediately, day or night." His tone left no doubt, and the painful truth hit me. My brother of a few hours was more willing to protect me than the sun I raised for 38 years. I put the card in my purse with the warehouse documents. "Ray," I said quietly, "why did our father write the will like that? With that clause about heirs who try to deceive others. Why would a man who spent his life lying suddenly create a moral rule?" Ray let out a long breath. "I've wondered the same. My guess. When he realized he was dying, he had a moment of clarity. Or maybe cowardice. He couldn't tell us the truth while alive. But he wanted to stop us from destroying each other after he was gone. It was his last twisted attempt at protecting us. One last manipulation," I muttered. "Even dead, he wanted control." Ray nodded. "Yes, but in the end, that clause saved you. Without it, Michael would have won." The truck slowed as we approached my building. 20 minutes later, Ray parked in front of the gray concrete structure I'd lived in for nearly 3 decades. Small balconies with faded laundry. Plants that had given up halfway. It wasn't pretty, but it was home. "Will you be okay tonight?" Ray asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. "I'll be fine. I just need time." I stepped out of the truck and handed him his jacket. He took it but didn't drive away. "Nora," he said, "tomorrow at 10, I'm meeting my lawyer. Can you come? I want you there when we begin the will process." I hesitated. I had 3 houses to clean tomorrow, but none of that mattered now. "I'll be there," I said. "Send me the address." He texted me the location, then got out of the truck and walked around to me. He hugged me quick but firm. "You're going to get through this," he said softly. "All the pain, all the betrayal, You'll survive it. You're stronger than you think. He pulled back and looked me in the eyes. And you're not alone anymore. You have me. He waited until I reached the building entrance before he got back in his truck. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. When I opened the door, my little tour-room apartment welcomed me with its stillness. The coffee cup in the sink. The newspaper on the table. My unmade bed. Everything exactly as it was 3 days ago. But I wasn't the same. The woman who lived here before believed her son loved her. Believed her father was a quiet, decent man. Believed family was built from blood. That woman was gone. This new version of me knew that family could also come from a brother you never knew. Standing in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse, waiting just to protect you. I collapsed on the sofa, still wearing my shoes. I couldn't cry anymore. I couldn't think. I could only breathe. Tomorrow, everything would begin: lawyers, inheritance, consequences. Tonight, I just needed the silence. My phone buzzed. I expected a message from Ray, but it wasn't him. It was Michael. The words on the screen hit me like cold water. Mom, we need to talk. Please give me a chance to explain. It's not what you think. I love you. Your son, Michael. I read it once, twice. A third time. Each time, it twisted deeper inside me. I love you. The same words he used to ruin me. Those 2 words, I love you, words that had meant everything to me for 38 years, now felt hollow. They rattled around inside me like empty metal coins pretending to be gold. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A part of me wanted to reply. The part still clinging to memories of the little boy who used to cling to my leg when he was scared of the dark. But the other part, the part that had grown a spine of steel in the last few hours, knew better. Answering him would be stepping back into a trap. He didn't want to explain. He wanted to manipulate. He wanted to twist my heart like he always had. So, I blocked his number. 3 taps on the screen. A tiny action, but it felt like cutting an umbilical cord that had connected us for nearly 4 decades. I cried while doing it. Silent tears that dripped onto the screen, blurring his name until it vanished. I wasn't just blocking him. I was mourning what I thought I had. The son I loved was gone, if he had ever existed at all. The real man was someone else, someone cruel, someone I never would have chosen to love. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. The lamps flickered weakly. A stray dog rummaged through a trash bin. A couple walked by, holding hands, whispering. Life kept moving, indifferent to my shattered world. And I wondered how many windows hid tragedies like mine. How many mothers were betrayed by their own children. How many family secrets rotted quietly behind thin walls. My phone vibrated again. This time it was an unknown number. My chest tightened. I opened the message. Sandra, it's Danielle. Please listen. Michael is desperate. We made a mistake. We can fix this. You'll forgive us. You're his mother. Mothers always forgive. The rage inside me flared so hot I had to sit down. Danielle, the same woman who helped humiliate me, who laughed behind my back, who planned my downfall, was now begging. Not out of remorse, but because they had lost. I blocked her too. Then I turned off my phone completely, placed it on the table, and walked to my bedroom. I collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. The sheets smelled of cheap detergent and loneliness. I tried to sleep, but my thoughts tore through the darkness. I saw 5-year-old Michael crying because the kids made fun of his worn shoes. I saw 15-year-old Michael glowing with pride after winning his science fair. I saw 25-year-old Michael introducing Danielle, and me crying tears of joy, believing he had found love. All those memories now felt poisoned. Every smile, every hug, every "I love you, Mom." Were they ever real? Or had he always been practicing manipulation? When did he stop seeing me as his mother and start seeing me as an obstacle? The questions spun inside me without mercy. Around 3 in the morning, exhaustion finally pulled me under. I dreamed of my father. We were in a huge house I didn't recognize. Empty, cold. He walked ahead of me, always just out of reach. Every room I entered was filled with photographs of strangers, women, children, families, smiling. And my father stood in each photo, his arm around a different woman, a different child, all his hidden lives displayed like trophies. I woke up gasping at 6. My heart pounded. Sweat soaked the sheets. Gray dawn seeped through the window like a ghost. My whole body ached as if I'd fought a battle in my sleep. I washed my face with ice-cold water and stared into the mirror. The woman looking back at me looked 10 years older. Deep circles. Cracked lips. Hollow eyes. Pain ages you. I made coffee bitter and too strong and held the warm mug between my hands. Today I had to go with Ray to the lawyer. Today our father's truths would begin to unravel formally. Today I had to be strong. But in the quiet of my kitchen, I let myself be fragile. At 8, I turned on my phone. 15 messages from Michael. New numbers. I deleted them without opening. 5 missed calls from Danielle. Ignored. But one message was from Ray. Good morning, Sandra. I hope you rested a little. I'll be waiting for you at 10. We're going to start fixing this together. Your brother, Ray. Your brother. Those 2 words warmed me in a way I didn't expect. I'd never had siblings. My whole life I'd been an only child. But now I had someone who protected me when he didn't have to. Someone who chose to call me family after knowing me for barely a day. And maybe for the first time in my life I believed I deserved that. Family doesn't always come from where you expect. Sometimes it comes from the shadows of an abandoned warehouse. I showered, put on my best dress, a dark gray one. I saved for rare occasions, and brushed my hair until it looked as neat as possible. I needed to look composed. I needed to feel like I had control, even if inside I was anything but steady. At 9:30, I took the bus toward downtown New York. Traffic was thick and noisy. The bus crowded, but I used the long ride to breathe, to prepare myself mentally. By the time I arrived, my hands had stopped trembling. Ray was waiting outside the building. He looked almost formal in black pants and a pressed white shirt. His posture was stiff, like he was trying to contain nerves he didn't want to show. He smiled when he saw me. I thought maybe you'd change your mind. I shook my head. No, I need this. For me, for my mother, for the truths we never got. He nodded and offered his arm. I took it, and together we walked inside. The lawyer's office was on the 5th floor, beige walls, framed diplomas, shelves full of legal books. The lawyer, James, was a man in his 50s with heavy glasses and an even heavier stare. He shook our hands formally and gestured for us to sit in the leather chairs across from him. Mr. Ray explained the basics, he said, opening a fat folder. But I need everything from the beginning. Every detail matters. For the next hour, Ray and I told him everything. Our father's secret families, the hidden will, the clause about deceit, Ethan's plan to destroy me, the warehouse documents, the photographs, the notebook, every piece of evidence Ray had gathered. James took notes without stopping. Sometimes his eyebrows lifted slightly at the most unbelievable details, but his face remained calm and professional. This is complicated, he finally said, closing his notebook, but it is manageable. The clause in the will is clear. If we prove Ethan attempted to dispossess you through deceit, he automatically loses his rights. He looked at me carefully. But you need to understand something. If we proceed, your son will face consequences, possibly criminal charges. Are you prepared for that? The question hit me like a blow. Could I watch my son face charges? Could I be the reason he stood before a judge? The mother in me wanted to scream no. But the woman he tried to destroy knew there was only one answer. I'm ready, I said quietly. My son made his choices. James nodded. Then we move forward. He explained the steps. First, he would deliver the evidence to the notary. Then a formal hearing. All heirs summoned. Ethan allowed to defend himself, though his chances were slim with the evidence. Ray collected. The process will take 4 to 6 weeks, James said. But I can say with confidence, Ethan will lose his rights. The inheritance will be between the two of you. Ray and I exchanged a silent understanding. We want to use the money for something specific, I said. We want to help single mothers who clean houses. Scholarships, support, opportunities. James took off his glasses, and for the first time, his expression softened into something like admiration. That is remarkable. I can help you establish a foundation legally protected, properly managed. We spent the next hour discussing details. What to call it? How to select recipients. How to divide funds between scholarships and aid. Ray suggested naming it after our mothers. The Ellen and Victoria Foundation. Tears filled my eyes. It was perfect. When we left the office, it was nearly 2 in the afternoon. The sun was bright, and the city pulsed with life around us. Ray suggested lunch. We found a small family-owned restaurant nearby. Plastic tables, chalkboard menu, cheap bottled sodas, real food. We ate quietly at first, letting everything sink in. Do you think our mothers would be proud? I finally asked. Ray put down his spoon and looked at me with a certainty that warmed my chest. They'd be more than proud. They'd be amazed. We grew up on opposite sides of the city, never knowing each other existed. And instead of fighting for money, we chose to turn our pain into hope. That's something our father never did. He was right. Our father spent decades hiding his lies. In less than a day, Ray and I had decided to use his secrets to build something better. Are you scared of the hearing? Ray asked. Yes, I admitted. I'll have to see Ethan. Hear him lie. Watch him try to twist everything. But I need to do it. Not for revenge. For closure. Ray nodded. I'll be with you the whole time. You won't face it alone. We walked through downtown after lunch with no plan. Just letting the city move around us. Street vendors shouting, kids running, people laughing, normal lives. You know what the strangest part is? I said as we sat beneath a large tree. If Ethan hadn't betrayed me, I never would have known the truth. I never would have gone to that warehouse. And I never would have met you. Ray let out a dry, almost ironic laugh. His betrayal united us. The plan that was supposed to destroy you created a real family instead. We sat on that bench for almost an hour, trading memories of our separate childhoods that felt strangely alike. The same struggles, the same hunger, the same mothers who sacrificed everything. The next weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork and meetings with James. Ethan tried contacting me repeatedly, new numbers, letters, even showing up near my building. I didn't open the door. Ray had given me a whistle and the number of a police officer he trusted. We documented every attempt. More evidence of harassment. Danielle tried another tactic, posting lies on social media. She claimed I was a cruel mother who was trying to ruin her son's life. Some acquaintances messaged me to ask if it was true. I ignored them all. People only believe the story that makes them feel superior. I explained the real situation to the few people who reached out. Some believed me. Others chose to believe Michael. In moments like these, you discover who your real friends are, and the list was much shorter than I imagined. But I also discovered new allies. Emma, the elderly receptionist, visited me one afternoon. She brought homemade cookies wrapped in foil and a thermos of tea. We sat in my small living room, and she cried while apologizing over and over. I didn't know, she sobbed. I didn't know your son would use what I said to hurt you. I thought he was just curious about his grandfather. I wrapped my arms around her fragile shoulders and told her it wasn't her fault. She, too, had been caught in the spiderweb my father had spun decades before. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I got out of bed 3 times for water. I checked my gray dress 5 times to make sure it was ironed properly. I rehearsed what I might say. Nothing felt right. Nothing could calm me. At 4 in the morning, I gave up trying to sleep and made coffee. I sat by the window and watched the sky shift from black to gray to soft orange. Ray arrived at 8 sharp. He wore a dark suit, stiff, formal, unfamiliar on him. It was probably new. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I can be." The hearing was held in an old notary building in the historic district. Inside, the air felt heavy with rules and history. The room where the hearing would take place had dark wood walls, padded chairs, and a long desk where the notary sat with the lawyers. Michael was already inside. He looked drained, exhausted, pale. His suit was wrinkled. Danielle sat stiff beside him, makeup perfect but eyes uneasy. When they saw me, Michael stood up. "Mom, please." His lawyer grabbed his sleeve and pulled him back into his seat. Ray placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder as we sat on the opposite side of the room. The distance between us felt symbolic, a line drawn between past and present. The notary entered, a serious man with white hair and unreadable eyes. He reviewed some papers, then began the proceedings. For the next 2 hours, our lawyer James laid out everything: the emails, the bank transfers, the messages between Michael and Danielle, Emma's testimony, the notes Ray had collected. The evidence spoke for itself. Michael's lawyer tried to argue it was all a misunderstanding, family curiosity, miscommunication, but his arguments melted when compared to the reality of the documents displayed one by one. The notary listened silently, occasionally writing something down, his expression giving nothing away. Then it was time for the involved parties to speak. Michael stood, gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I just wanted what belonged to me," he said. His voice broke in places. "My grandfather was rich, and we lived in poverty. Why? Why did he keep everything from us while my mother killed herself working? I deserved that money. I needed it." He looked at me directly then, eyes burning with anger and desperation. "And you, Mom, you would have wasted it. You never do anything for yourself. I was going to do something important with it." I rose slowly. Even I didn't expect myself to stand. "You're right about one thing," I said. "Your grandfather kept us in poverty. That was cruel. But your answer to cruelty was more cruelty. You lied, you manipulated, you tried to break me." My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. "If you had just asked me, if you had needed help, I would have given you everything. But instead, you chose to destroy me. And that choice tells me who you are." The room fell silent. Even Danielle stopped crying for a moment. Michael's shoulders sagged. He lowered himself into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The notary closed the file with a decisive thud. "I have heard enough. The evidence clearly shows that Michael Henderson attempted to deceive and emotionally coerce another heir. According to the will of the deceased, he forfeits all rights to the inheritance. The estate will be divided between the remaining legitimate heirs, Sandra Harrison and Ramon Harrison." He struck his gavel. "This hearing is closed." We walked outside under a sun that was too bright for such a heavy moment. Ray hugged me tightly. "You did it," he whispered. "You faced him." But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, grieving the part of me that had just died. "I lost my son," I said. Ray shook his head gently. "You lost the illusion of him. Now, we build something better." 6 months later, the Ellen and Victoria Foundation opened its doors. We sold the 5 properties for $820,000. $50,000 went to Emma, who cried so hard she could barely hold the check. The rest we divided, some to secure our futures, most to fund the foundation. In the first year, we granted 30 full scholarships to the children of domestic workers. We helped 50 mothers pay emergency rent. We financed 3 small businesses for women trying to leave cleaning work behind. We offered hope where there had been none. I never spoke to Michael again. I heard bits and pieces through people. He and Danielle divorced. He moved away. His new job didn't pay much. Part of me still ached when I thought of him. A mother's love never really disappears, not entirely. But I learned something. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. True love sometimes means stepping away. Ray became my real family. Every Sunday dinner, every birthday, every anniversary of our mother's deaths, every moment spent working side by side at the foundation. One night, while we reviewed scholarship applications at my kitchen table, Ray looked up and said something I will never forget. Dad showed us exactly how not to live. He made the wrong path so clear that the only choice we had was to take the opposite one. He was right. I didn't want to be like my father, living a life made of lies. I didn't want to be like my son, consumed by greed. I wanted to be like my mother. Like Ree's mother. A woman who gave everything, even when she had nothing. Now, 3 years after that day in the hotel lobby where my life broke apart, I see the whole path clearly. The betrayal hurt. The truth burned. But from the ashes came something I never expected. A brother. A purpose. A new beginning. My son left me abandoned with an impossible bill in a luxury hotel. But an elderly receptionist brought me an envelope that changed everything. Inside wasn't just a key to a storage unit, it was the key to the truth. And though that truth shattered me, it also freed me. Today, I walk through the world without the weight of secrets that weren't mine. Without the illusion of a perfect family that never existed. Only with the imperfect but honest reality of who I am. And I finally understand. That truth is worth more than any inheritance.